A contemporary word is Blessing the Water, the Wine by Jan Richardson. You thought you had learned to live with the empty, the hollow. You could place your ear against the rim of the vessel of your life and hear its ringing echo with equanimity, not expecting any more, not even bothered almost to be a bystander at the feast. If not delighting in the celebration, at least not despairing in it. When the water rushed into the emptiness, you were surprised that you could even feel the sudden wellspring when you thought all had been poured out. And then suddenly, the sweetness that stuns you, that tells you this was not all, this was not the end, that this blessing was saving the best for last. Amen.
Well, today's invitation to transformation has multiple levels in it, and we will have to touch on some of them later because, like any good story, they've been talking about it for a couple thousand years. So Jan Richardson starts one of her commentaries on this passage saying, "How complicated can it be to plan a wedding?" She's quoting a young man who just didn't quite know what it could take. But our story today does tell about a wedding where someone messed up. Whoever was responsible for ordering the wine seems to have underestimated the amount that would be needed. Maybe they had the wrong guest count? It's possible, I suppose, that Jesus and the disciples were last-minute add-ons to the list. I mean, they had just come up from the Jordan River, and they'd been visiting with John the Baptist, so maybe. Or maybe multiplication had failed the wedding planner. How many guests times how many days? According to some sources, festivities could extend 5 to 7 days. Maybe the order was correct, but delivered incomplete. Maybe some got spilled. Remember last week with the communion? Maybe the wine was homegrown, and last year's vintage was not as bountiful as needed. Whatever the reason for the shortage, we wouldn't have this story without it. So perhaps it can be complicated to plan a wedding celebration. Even a celebration that could be just symbolic, like this one, this symbolic story. But if we do imagine a wedding, we can find ourselves remembering the significance of weddings we have witnessed, even our own. We can wonder at the decision two people make to commit themselves to each other, even knowing some of the obstacles to such a partnership. Is there a greater sign of hope? And not just marriage covenants, of course, extended families, friendships, community connections, churches. There are many places where we can honor those threads of connection and commit to engage the struggles and joys that come with them. We will always have to wonder what miracle will carry us through. Will we even notice it, recognize it? Following the previous chapters we've been reading in the Gospel of John, chapter I should say, we're alert for questions, right? Remember, who are you? What are you doing here? What are you looking for? Can anything good come out of this situation? And we're alert for answers to all those questions. And so far, the answer seems to be some version of come and see. So let's see. If we put ourselves in this story, we might say that life opens like a wedding feast, as it has for so many of us. We've been well loved, well fed, well dressed, well appreciated. And this is certainly how many artists have imagined this scene over the past 2 millennia. In 1563, Veronese painted one for the refectory of a monastery in Venice. No expense was spared. The work is 32 feet wide and 23 feet high. Used the most expensive pigments. And for more than 200 years, the monks ate their meals with a crowd of elaborately dressed notables, accompanied by Jesus, his mother, and a few disciples. And today, it is the largest painting in the Musée du Louvre in Paris, taken as war booty by Napoleon and his army in 1797. But let's put ourselves back in this gospel story. Come and see. We're attending a wedding in Cana of Galilee, along with Jesus, his mother, and his disciples. We might note that Jesus' mother's name is never given. At some point, the wine gives out, and the mother of Jesus says, "They have no wine." That's not quite a question for us, but something to watch out for. They have no wine. I wonder about her tone of voice. Does she lean over quietly and just kind of keep him informed of what she's noticed? Is she thirsty and disappointed? Is she dismayed at witnessing such a faux pas, sure to bring shame on the hosts? Perhaps she is furious. Is she protesting? Is she taking things into her own hands, becoming an activist? I wonder about Jesus' tone, too, as he responds, "What concern is that of ours?" What concern is that of ours? For the moment, Jesus is being a cautious activist, and he raises a good question. When is something our concern, and when is it beyond our responsibility? We might think concern about ourselves, maybe our responsibility. We may find ourselves unable to sustain our loving intentions in situations of thirst and disappointment, disagreement, conflict, even betrayal. The cup is empty. What do we do? It might be concern about others. When we witness others struggling, what do we do? How do we respond when a general plunders a painting? When do we say, "They have no wine"? We can ask ourselves, when something falls in our sphere of concern, how do we respond? We try to remember that our concern may extend far beyond our sphere of influence. Historian and activist Tim Snyder says, "You cannot do everything, but you must do something." So where do we have agency to act on our concerns? Given our commitments, our time, our relationships, our energy, our money, local circumstances, can we bring our concern closer to our sphere of influence? Given our current imperial situation, I struggle with this one. I love what Jesus' activist mother says to the servants, "Do whatever he tells you." That in itself could be our lesson here for today. Do whatever Jesus tells us. Being curious, of course, how do we understand what Jesus tells us. Jesus says to the servants, "Fill the jars with water," and they fill them up to the brim. In all the paintings I've seen depicting the wedding feast at Cana, there are 6 large water jars, quite visible. In this story, the jars are empty. Their contents have been used at the start of the wedding celebration for purification rituals. These are large jars, 20 or 30 gallons. There must have been many, many guests to need that much water. Usually, I try to imagine myself as one of the human characters in a story, but let us follow Jan Richardson's lead here to imagine ourselves as the empty jars. For the moment, we have served our purpose, providing water for the ritual. We are resting. For the moment, we have no concerns. How surprised we are when Jesus says, "Fill the jars with water." We knew we were thirsty, but we never anticipated such lavish attention. Fill the jars. Nor did we anticipate what would happen next, that we would hold astonishing sweetness, the best of wine. That's the moment that Veronese shows in his painting. The jars have been filled. The water has turned to wine. That's Veronese's moment. Because Jesus says to them, "Draw some out and take it to the person in charge of the banquet." Jesus knows what has happened. His mother surely does. The servants have seen it all. The jars know. Even the watching disciples know. No one else. When the person in charge tastes the water, he calls the bridegroom and says, "Everyone serves the good wine first. But you've kept the good wine until now." Jesus does this, the first of his signs, in Cana of Galilee, and reveals his glory, and his disciples believe in him. The Gospel of John doesn't call this a miracle, but a sign, the first of 7 signs in the Gospel. So what happens here? The wedding guests are served fine wine. Better wine than before. More than enough wine. Think about this. 6 jars, 20 to 30 gallons each, 180 gallons. One commentator converted those gallons to a more familiar measure, 1,100 bottles. You may remember that Napoleon and his troops plundered the Veronese painting in 1797. You're probably concerned about that, as I am. In 1798, this looted art was stored at the Louvre Museum. I'm going to have to give you an abbreviated history here. But in 1804, the French Senate proclaimed Napoleon emperor. And later that year, he crowned himself emperor. This title was supposed to demonstrate a new political system. The emperor governed over the French people with their consent, preserving the appearance of the French Republic. After 1815, and you may remember that that's about how long Napoleon's reign lasted, the repatriation of looted works of art was integral to the post-Napoleonic conciliation treaties. Yet the curator of the musée claimed that Veronese's canvas was too fragile to travel. It stayed in Paris. During the Franco-Prussian War, 1870 to 71, this painting was stored in a box in Brittany, trying to avoid plunder. During the Nazi occupation of France, the painting was rolled up and continually transported to different places, hiding throughout the south of France, lest the Nazis plunder it. And in 2007, I guess it's a sort of repatriation, a full-sized digital facsimile of the wedding feast at Cana was hung in the refectory of the monastery in Venice. I find myself reflecting all this because of some of my concerns of the present moment, as you might wonder. The self-anointing as an emperor, the plunder and planned plunder of other countries. When does our 1815 come, and when can we repatriate? So it's interesting, this story. We don't know where Cana is in Galilee, but we're still talking about Cana 2,000 years later. We're still looking at art about this story, about Cana. We're still imagining what it might mean to us. It's a sign, a wonder that a story can be sustained so long. Now, Jesus' action isn't only a sign in itself, it reveals who Jesus is. So we're starting to get that picture here. We're still in chapter 2 in the Gospel of John. But over and over in the coming chapters, we get to see Jesus persisting in signs that show his glory. The Gospel of John is continually asking us to believe. It's hard in this 21st century to know just how to believe, just what to believe. But I do note that these stories of Jesus' provision of plenty, not only at a wedding, but on a hillside, not only at a wedding, but healing someone, that Jesus continually entering those places may be showing us, if not telling us, what Jesus is telling us to do. Jan Richardson asks us, she said, how are you keeping your eyes open for signs and wonders these days? What sustains you when the signs are hard to see? As you pray or yearn or ache for needed miracles in your life or in the life of another, are there marvels God is already up to? Might the miracle be coming in a different form than you expect? And can you let yourself see it? How might God be inviting you to participate in the working out of a wonder in the life of another? How do you keep yourself open? Open to the surprising gifts, the sharp, sweet wine that God is bringing. I commented earlier about Jesus, the cautious activist. I just want to note here that in the very next story in the gospel, Jesus goes to Jerusalem for the Passover, drives out the animal sellers, and turns over the tables of the money changers. Caution doesn't hold for Jesus. Well, how complicated is it to plan a wedding? How complicated is it? That's the concern I started with. But I leave with some lines that may help me as I plan this complicated wedding. I like this line, "There is no wine," that we notice when things are empty. That we say, what is our concern here? That we remember, do whatever he tells you. Fill the jars with water. Now, draw some out. Fill the jars with water. Now, draw some out. Amen.